Okay, finally back with more videos, more Bleach videos like I promised. So, I actually got into a little bit of a personal conflict. My hair got too long, so I needed to cut my bangs, but I cut it too long, so I thought we had a little bit of crisis here and I couldn't return. But I have returned now to talk about Bleach! Tite Kubo's finest work. So we are here to discuss it. Now is the time. So, okay. This is about Sosuke Aizen. Sosuke Aizen. You've had bajillion Aizen Bankai theories throughout the years, and this is my personal theory. But before I run into all the other theories, I'll probably review the core ones that I've seen. I think the ones that have the most prominence within the Bleach fandom. So, the first is a very simple one. Aizen never had a Bankai. I've seen this one for a while. I feel like it more came around after Fake Karakura, to be honest. But, what people say here is, well, Aizen doesn't have a Bankai because he was so strong, he doesn't need it, is what they're saying. Well, I've always had a problem with that because the idea of Aizen not being prepared for something like Bankai, he should see something like Bankai as easy. And it's not like Aizen hates Bankai or anything like that. You saw Gin using a Bankai, no problem. He never did holification or anything like that. He just whipped out his Bankai. So I don't think Aizen has a real problem with Bankai. I mean, he might. He might, because obviously he doesn't like the tradition of the Shinigami and the Zanpakuto and things like that. And he wants to eliminate that. And the way Tosin, I'd be a Bankai kind of stuff. Maybe Aizen does feel similarly to a degree, but I just don't think he would never learn Bankai for that reason. Second theory would be his Bankai, if he does have one, what it would be. Um, I see time reversal a lot. This seems to be like a classic thing. Time reversal. I don't know why it would be that. We know that all Shikai and Bankai have linked abilities, so it's not going to be time reversal. It has to do something with perfect hypnosis. Um, the one I think is the most credible is the 2, which is like the Tsukuyomi theory, where it's basically like Tsukuyomi from Naruto, where Aizen would just put you under this like spell, and then you'd be trapped in this like space of hypnosis. Kind of like how Shinji makes an illusion of the reverse world, Aizen would make the hypnosis world, I guess. And then he'd be able to have even greater control over you. But, I mean, maybe. Maybe it would be something like, rather than using illusions to misguide you, he could actually, like, control you, like, possess you. Maybe. Yeah. The other theory is, his ability is to make his illusions reality, basically. Um, so, he gives an example of, what was it? Oh, God. I can make a fly appear to be a dragon, I think it was, and in his Bankai he could actually do that. Again, maybe. It would be OP, but it basically would just be like Grammy. Like, that's what it would be. It would be just like his ability. Oh yeah, I just manifest what I imagine. Assuming it doesn't have limits, like, it would just be Grammy's ability. So, I don't know. I mean, with Aizen's power, it would be OP, but Aizen's already OP, so whatever. I mean, if that was his ability, I think he'd be able to manage against you like that. Well, not, like, completely, but you know what I mean. He'd be OP. He's already OP, he'd be more OP. And then probably the next theory, which probably be the last one I'll talk about, which is his Shikai is his Bankai. And this will be part of my theory today. So I'll be going into my theory. And I have never heard this theory, probably because it's more intricate than all the rest of them. I will preface this by saying part of this theory is justified by the Zanpakuto Rebellion filler, parts of it. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, some people like to discuss is that filler canon at this point, considering like Shunsui's Bankai and everything like that. Yeah, I mean, Rukia when she went into Bankai looked a lot like her Bankai, Zanpakuto spirit as well. So, at the bare minimum, we can just say Kubo took some inspiration, but I don't really know what to say. But whether you think it's canon or not, I don't really care because it's a theory, and I can slightly bend canon as much as I want to, attain my theory. I'll do it with Dragon Ball, I'll do it with Naruto, I'll do it here. And even then, I don't think people would mind, unless you're some like manga purist, which if you are, I hope you like Kubo's backgrounds, but that doesn't matter. Okay, so here's the theory. There's a bit to this, so I've never seen this before, but whatever. So my theory is that Aizen, his Shikai is his Bankai. That is his Bankai ability. Kanzen Saimin is his Bankai, but it's his only ability. And what I mean by this is, in my opinion, Aizen is in a permanent Bankai. Just as in Ichigo is in a permanent Shikai, Aizen is in a permanent Bankai. And Kanzen Saimin is his Bankai. Now I will explain all of this. So I do Bleach power levels, just like I mentioned in the last one, and Aizen, he's OP obviously, 50,000, pretty good base. Way better than everyone else besides Yamamoto, and then he becomes a god. His final form is 500,000, so times 10 what he originally was. I'm a fan of what I do, but the problem with him having a Bankai in this case is that if he did, he would be like in the millions, and the only character in the millions in the entire series is Yuha. So I mean, he'd be like 3 million if he went to Bankai in his final form. So the problem is he's kind of just too strong with the idea that he has a Bankai. I don't like the idea that he has a Bankai. That he can do a Bankai on top of how powerful he already is. I just don't think it's reasonable. And that's where this theory came about. Is, oh, well, I don't think he really could have a Bankai, but the idea that he never learned it is dumb to me. So in the end, I came to this conclusion. He is in a permanent Bankai. Like Ichigo is in permanent Shikai. So then I need to explain myself, okay, that's a cool idea. Kanzen Saimin is so OP, the idea of it being a Shikai always seemed kind of questionable. So if that's the idea, then why is Aizen in the permanent Bankai? And that's really the main question. When it comes to a theory like that, you might say, oh, well, that's realistic, that's kind of cool, but why? And this is my theory as to why. Do you remember the Sword Fiends? They were at the end of the Zanpakuto Rebellion. What happens after the rebellion? Zanpakuto spirits that lost their master would go crazy, basically. They would become, super aggressive, and they would just go on a killing spree because their Ryatsu would be out of control, and they wouldn't be able to control themselves. And their Ryatsu would just spike, and they would be in a permanent Bankai until they either are killed or just like self-destruct on their own, basically. So what I'm saying, Aizen is like that. As in, this is not a situation where Aizen died and his sword spirit was left behind. It is the reverse. That is an example of that case, but I am saying Aizen killed his sword spirit, which had the exact same effect on him that it would be if the reverse. So, in this case, if your sword spirit is killed, or if you are killed and your sword spirit remains manifested, it becomes a sword fiend. It becomes crazy and aggressive, and its Ryatsu spikes and becomes a permanent Bankai until it goes. What I'm saying is, when Aizen trained to learn his Bankai, where you manifest the spirit, outside, and it's not an illusion or anything like that, by the way. Renji was able to see Zangetsu, when Ichigo was training to learn Bankai. So they actually like physically appear. It's not like an illusion or anything, or like an image. I'm saying is when Aizen was trying to learn Bankai, where you dominate the sword spirit and you become, I don't know, a complete master, Aizen actually killed his sword spirit. What that would have done, as is seen by the previous example, is it would put you in a permanent Bankai and probably would make your Ryatsu super chaotic. Um, and what I interpret is Aizen is immune to those effects because, he's just that strong. He can control that Ryatsu no matter how chaotic it is. He keeps it under control, right? And he doesn't become insane for that reason either. So that is the theory. Aizen is in a permanent Bankai because he killed his sword spirit. And therefore that's the effect of that. Because that's the effect it has if the master dies and the sword spirit remains. So I'm just interpreting if the sword spirit is killed but the master remains, then it would be the same effect. One cannot survive without the other. So yeah, Kanzen Saimin is his Bankai ability. So, what would his Shikai be? It could be the actual ploy he said, which is the mist illusion thing, where Isane said that Aizen's Shikai is this thing where he summons mist and then uses it to create an illusion for enemies to attack each other. That could be his Shikai. I mean, it could be. And if you look at the way Aizen fights as well, a common thing he'll do with his illusions is a very simple thing. He'll just make an image of himself that isn't there. Other person attacks it, fails, and then he just slashes them. If he used his Shikai in that way, you'd think that's exactly the kind of thing he would do with the description of Shikai. And he does something like that, several times. He does that when he finishes off Toshiro. The first time. He does that with the bait and switch with Momo. Everyone knows that one. Also another one to Toshiro. So he does that move. I think he does the same kind of thing to. He might do it to Shinji. I don't remember completely, but he does that move. The piss you off, and then you charge at him, and then it's just an illusion. Then he stabs you. He does that. That's probably his main finishing move, if anything. So if he used his Shikai like the way it's described, he would do a move like that. In that idea. So the other aspect about this theory that I like is the thematic element to it. Aizen is, of course, a rebel of the Soul Society. And he is a pure Shinigami, by the way. It is the interesting thing, right? Is that Aizen wants to unite Shinigami and Hollow and end that difference and become a superior being and all that. Aizen is a pure Shinigami. And yet he is defeated by Ichigo, the Shinigami human Quincy Hollow Fullbringer guy, the guy who is the combination of all the different elements, we'll say, and Aizen is defeated by him. It is quite ironic, and there is an interesting duality between Ichigo and Aizen. You look at Ichigo's Bankai, it's a black blade with red innards, and then Aizen, his is a white blade, of course. Its handle is green, but its innards are white. So the handle and the innards are reversed for each blade. Ichigo has a manji for his hilt. I mean, I'll go into that when I talk about my analysis of Ichigo, his powers and everything like that. But Aizen actually has kind of it's almost like an octagon kind of thing for his handle. It is interesting, but their swords look generally opposite of each other. Ukiura's was kind of similar in that respect, but not to the same degree. Ukiura's sword actually looks kind of similar to Aizen's, actually. That's one thing you might mention is, if Aizen is in a permanent Bankai, then why does his sword just look like a normal Zanpakuto? My reasoning would be either his sword never actually changed when he went into Shikai or Bankai, because it's an illusion sword. Maybe something maybe like how Byakuya doesn't, his sword just goes the blade goes away in the first, then he just drops it in the second, or Hitsugai doesn't lose his sword when he uses Bankai Shikai, he just shoots out Yorimaru. Maybe. Either that, or it would change. It's just that the Sword Fiends, as you saw, most of them, yeah, almost all of them basically, they had normal Zanpakutos anyway, even though they're supposed to be in a permanent Bankai. So in the case of Aizen, it would be the same thing. He has his Bankai ability from his sword, but his sword is still just a Zanpakuto. So either it would change in a normal case, or it wouldn't change. But even if it doesn't, change, that would be the explanation. Again, so there's that. Another interesting aspect of the duality between Ichigo and Aizen, of course. I mean, another theory I have had is the whole sword fusion thing. How Aizen's sword fused with him, Ichigo's sword fused with him. I have theorized that you need to have a certain high enough level of Ryatsu, of course, for that, to the godly point where you can't be sensed. But also, maybe you need to be in a permanent Bankai as well. Because I do think Yamamoto Bankai, Zankai no Tachi North, comparable to Dangai Ichigo. I do think that. In my opinion, Dangai Ichigo is second strongest character in the verse. I am a Dangai Ichigo supporter. I think Dangai Ichigo is stronger than Final Bankai Ichigo. I think Monster Aizen is stronger than Muken Aizen, but I think Muken Aizen is stronger than Butterfly Aizen. We can debate on that forever. There's really almost nothing to confirm. But it is interesting. If you think Yamamoto is comparable to Dangai Ichigo, Yamamoto, his Bankai, his sword never fuses with him or anything like that. So, again, if you are one for the sword fusion makes you a god theory, then, of course, at Yamamoto, his sword never fused with him. Maybe because you need a permanent Bankai before it does, along with high enough Ryatsu. Because, of course, Dangai Ichigo, from what I would interpret, would have a permanent Bankai in essence by that point, right? I don't think Dangai Ichigo could leave Bankai. I'm not under that impression. Which would mean both him and Aizen are under permanent Bankais, which means the sword fusion that happens for them, is affected by that. And of course it is great how Aizen, says his sword is fusing with them. His sword will be disposed of. When he is sealed by Uehara, his sword begins to disappear, and he says that, yes, I'm undergoing a further evolution. My sword will fuse with me just as it did with you, Ryoka. And I will attain an even greater form. And everything like that. Just an example of who's here, but in Aizen's case, it's the opposite, right? Ichigo defeats Aizen by fusing with his sword, completely. He becomes Zangetsu one and the same completely. Aizen is the reverse. He wanted to abolish his Zanpakuto. Yeah. Just so you can see. Here she is. Yeah, so Aizen wanted to eliminate his Zanpakuto. Ichigo fused with it completely, so that is obviously a symbolic comparison between them. The reverse. Get you a better view. Get you a better view. There you go. There you go, yeah. But, so they're obviously reverse in that way. Counterweights to each other in that way. Very symbolic, of course. Very symbolic, of course. Very nice. Very nice. And I will go more into this, when I see Ichigo's, when I do Ichigo's video on this. The last thing I will mention is the names of the Zanpakutos, and how that compares. So, Aizen, his Zanpakuto is Kyoka Subigetsu, Moonflower Water Moon, and then Ichigo's is Zangetsu, Slaying Moon. So, I think, well, yeah, besides Ishin, I think they're the only Zanpakuto that have Getsu, or moon, as a part of their name. Both of them are moons, so that is interesting. Of course, Ichigo defeats Aizen with Mugetsu, or Moonless Night. Again, quite symbolic there. So, that is interesting. But, that is the theory. I'm not sure what else I have to say. I mean, you could say, Aizen, Aizen is as strong as he is, like his Ryatsu is as high as it is because he's a permanent Bankai. Although I think his Ryatsu is, so strong regardless. You know. But yeah, I mean, that's really what it was about. It was about explaining how I don't think Aizen could have had a Bankai on top of his abilities he already had. I think that's just too OP, you know. Because I think he's stronger than Final Bankai Ichigo, but I don't think he's like way stronger and has the potential to be so much stronger. Like because on my calcs I had Final Bankai Ichigo at 432,000, and I had Muken Aizen at 500,000. So Ichigo is weaker, but he's not like cripplingly weaker. Like they could actually like fight. And Aizen would probably win, but whatever. Which is an interesting fact, by the way, that I've asked, is the fact that once Yuha is gone, like how did they get Aizen back into prison? Because like Aizen was like stronger than like anyone else. I think he was. I don't think anyone could have beat him. Ichigo is weaker than him. So I don't understand how they got Aizen back into prison unless they had some like seal on him. Which I don't think they did, because I remember Aizen, he got out of the chair and it implied like there was nothing sealing him anymore. So I don't know. Maybe Ichigo fought Aizen again, which would be epic if that were the case. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Ichigo used Final Getsuga again, and he doesn't have powers. I don't know. I really don't know. We don't know. All we get is the last little Yuha slash Yuha gets taken out, and that's what we get. So, calm down. So we don't really know the details of what happens because Kubo, cheeky girl. Kubo, he was a busy man and he'd been writing Bleach for 15 years and he was crippled mentally and physically, and he was done. So he finished it. I don't mind the Bleach ending, and I will need to do a video on the Bleach ending where I talk about why I actually don't mind it. But if the anime keeps that ending, it's Kubo's way. I honestly don't mind that much. We'll need to go into that in another video. But for this, me plus the cheeky girl. Her name is Vivian, by the way. Yes, named after the Paper Mario 2 character. Thank you for watching. If you have criticism, please respond. I think I covered everything from my notes on this topic. If you have anything to add or anything to critique, please say something. I've never heard this theory mentioned before by anyone, so I don't know. I've never seen it, so I think this is a new thing being brought up. So, if you have anything to comment, please do. If you have suggestions of your own to add or retract from this theory, please do. Rate, comment, subscribe, please do. Spaghetti King out. Thank you very much.